My name is Bill. Welcome to the Night Terrors Weekend Show. If you truly appreciate real-life maritime journeys into the void, do not even think of missing tonight's episode. Freaks from the Ocean Depths. Tonight we take a voyage into the darkest realms of the ocean, revealing the lairs of the most fearsome-looking creatures and other secrets of the deep. And we're starting right now. This is at Ranker.com. An article by Adira Putri, entitled The Creepiest Places in the Ocean. And Adira begins. Welcome, Truth Seeker. Only about 10% of the seafloor has been explored. But even still, our limited research has shown us one thing for sure. There are some bone-chillingly creepy things in the ocean. From natural but terrifying formations and trenches to shipwrecks and weird creatures. There's some stuff looking down there that should probably just be left alone. The creepiest places under the sea are hands down more unsettling than any creepy place on land because we simply don't know nearly as much about the ocean as we do about the surface. The deepest part of the ocean, the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench, is 7 miles below the surface. 1.5 miles deeper than Mount Everest is tall. Who knows what you might find down there? There could be real-life sea monsters. Welcome, Devoured Eagle and Casual Kitty. Oh, hi, Leanne is here. Diving into these weird undersea places would feel like entering a science fiction world or a horror movie. These places are where people come to face with terror, perils, and even their own demise. Welcome, Green Tea. Even a glimpse of some of these creepy places in the ocean is enough to induce a sense of dread. So let's dive in. The Mariana Trench is the deepest point on Earth, and we have no idea what's down there. The deepest known point on our planet. Only 3 people have been to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, at its deepest point, the Challenger Deep, which is 6.83 miles. It's pitch black down there. The water pressure is enough to kill you. Thank you, Captain Obvious. And oh yeah, there are hydrothermal vents that blow out water hot enough to melt the flesh from your body. So it's kind of harm to blame explorers for being trepidatious. Why is this page jumping around like this? Gonna be a jumpy page, I guess. No, we don't want to see this video. Don't care. Number 2, the Quarry of Wrecken Maelstrom is a permanent violent whirlpool. While most whirlpools are harmless or temporary, the Quarry of Wrecken Maelstrom in Scotland is in a league of its own. Not only is it a permanent vortex, it's also remarkably powerful. Mighty enough to be dubbed the 3rd strongest in the world. The hazard presented by this phenomenon depends on Mother Nature. With strong wind and current, the maelstrom can produce standing waves 15 feet high. You don't want to be around when that happens. The terrifyingly deep Great Blue Hole. Looks like a caldera. You don't even have to dive into this dark blue circle off the coast of Belize to experience its creepiness. The color of this natural phenomenon comes from its depths. At 407 feet deep, 124 meters, the hole is a one-of-a-kind diving experience with unique organisms, including some species of sharks like nurse sharks and bull sharks. Scientists even think the hole has something to tell us about the disappearance of the Mayan civilization. Boy, are these super short explanations here. Number 4. jumping all around. The remains of a devastating World War II battle lie at the bottom of Chuk Lagoon, Japan's main military base in the South Pacific during World War II. It's beautiful outside, but so creepy inside. Under the water, there are hundreds of aircraft and warships that were sunk in attacks, drowning with them hundreds of ill-fated soldiers. The frightening sight of ruined ships and planes, along with, yes, human skulls, greets those who have the nerve to visit here. The Devil's Sea is the twin to the Bermuda Triangle. The Devil's Sea is called the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific, and it's not difficult to understand why. This area off the coast of Tokyo is also known for strange disappearances and shipwrecks, including that of the MV Derbyshire, the biggest ship ever lost at sea, the biggest ship ever lost at sea. It was twice the size of the Titanic. The ancient Chinese believed that there was a huge dragon that lived under the sea, pulling down ships and planes. The ancient Chinese believed there was a huge dragon that lived under the sea, pulling down ships and planes. The ancient Chinese, forget it, and munching them for its sinister feast. Some people have reported seeing ghost ships sailing in the area. Well, I see there's like advertisements, and this one's not very well done, is it? Yeah, they don't have their page well designed, do they? This advertisement is permanently over part of the text. Well, we'll give it a try for Bermuda Triangle and its disappearances. This area, stretching between Florida and we'll never know, is something in history. For centuries, many ships and planes that have sailed or flown, and we'll never know. People have even attributed the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines flight, perhaps 575 or 373, or, well, there's a number of different combinations, to the Bermuda Triangle. Takahome Olsen, too, says Derbyshire is pronounced Derbyshire. Thank you, Takahome Olsen, too. Derbyshire. Notice it's not Shire. I got that part. I got 50%. Thank you, TO2. Derbyshire. Derbyshire. There I go again. 100% wrong there. Many popular theories to explain the oceanic area of the Bermuda Triangle that has devoured thousands of victims. Thousands. Include geomagnetic... include geomagnetic anomalies, mighty tidal waves, Atlantis, even extraterrestrial existence. It gets worse. Several authors keep extending the area beyond the known boundary because similar incidents have happened nearby, and then nearby that, and then nearby that, ad infinitum. I can't even say ad infinitum. Derbyshire. The mysterious pyramids of the Cuban underwater city. The spookiness of the Cuban underwater city lies in its mystery. The spookiness lies in mystery. What happened there? Why is an entire city lying more than 2,000 feet below the surface of the water? Since its discovery in 2002, not much information has become available, which makes one wonder, if no one has yet explored it, why not? Well, 2,000 feet below the surface of the water, it's not an afternoon dive. And if someone has, what did they find that they haven't shared with the public? Conspiracies everywhere in substitute for content. The ghostly wreck of the Titanic. For 73 years after it sank in 1912, the wreck of the Titanic paints a chilling picture of the aftermath of history's most famous sea tragedy. More than 1,500 people perished. many of them buried underwater, along with the enormous ship. That's where they all perished, right? Underwater with the enormous ship. Since the wreckage was found, not many, how about 99.99% of them? Since the wreckage was found, many efforts have been initiated to pull it from the bottom of the ocean. Unfortunately, none of these missions have succeeded. Yeah, let's have a Titanic museum. We'll float it to shore. TO2 says conspiracy theories exist because mainstream journalism is dead. Yeah, it's now owned by the corporations. Just corporate mouthpieces, that's all they are. You got to go to TikTok for the truth. And parts of YouTube. Las Cruces de Malpique is an underwater memorial for missionaries killed by pirates. The site of 40 stone crosses at the bottom of the sea, off the coast of La Palma in the Canary Islands. Looks exactly like a graveyard. While technically it is not, the gravestones were submerged to honor 40 Jesuit missionaries dispatched by pirates and thrown into the sea in the 1500s. The missionaries had sailed for La Palma, aware of the threats of death awaited them. Centuries later, in the year 2000, local people placed one cross for each monk, 65 feet below the surface, to honor the martyrs. The eerie atmosphere in the underground memorial sure matches the place's dark, tragic history. This is 50% fluff and 50% fact. Less than 50% fact, I imagine. Welcome, Paul Koloski. The Neptune Memorial Reef, another underwater cemetery. Let's check out some art. Thanks, guys. Here at Gaia.com is an article by Gaia staff. The Baltic Sea Anomaly, a crashed UFO or a natural rock formation. In the annals of unexplained mysteries, the Baltic Sea Anomaly is one of the more bizarre deep-sea finds of the past decade. The discovery occurred in 2011, when a deep-sea exploration team called Ocean X came across an unusual formation 300 feet below the surface off the coast of Sweden. Upon further inspection, divers and surface crew reported malfunctions in their electrical equipment whenever they came within 200 meters of the object, which appeared to be shaped, oddly enough, like the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. Peter Lindbergh and Dennis Asberg came across the giant 180-foot diameter mass on June the 19th, 2011, while trolling the Baltic and observing sonar imaging along the sea floor. They quickly picked up on the anomaly due to its circular shape and distinctively straight protrusions. Look at that thing. That's gotta be a spaceship. Look at that thing. It's got a dome here. That's wild. Adding to the mystery was what appeared to be an extensive trail. What some speculated could be evidence of a crash landing that had taken place. Shortly after their discovery, Lindbergh and Asberg set out to create a documentary that chronicled their attempts to dive down and study the anomaly. The two parlayed their clout from a previous exploration, in which they recovered a cache of vintage champagne from a shipwreck of 1907 that sold for record prices at a Christie's auction. This allowed them to embark on the bold endeavor of investigating the Baltic anomaly, which they hoped was either an extraterrestrial spaceship or a secret schmaltzy structure from World War II. And there it is. That's amazing. What the heck? Oh, you gotta be kidding me. That is art. That's intelligent made right there. Look at the trail. Looking at sonar imaging, the anomaly showed interesting characteristics that seemed to distinguish it from a natural rock formation. The explorers pointed to what appeared to be a staircase and a rounded hole encircled by a square frame as what they believe were distinctly artificial features. Maybe that's what they're calling here. Round hole, square frame. Looks like a dome to me. The crew returned to the surface with samples of the object that were later tested by Volker Bruchert, an associate professor of geology in Stockholm. Bruchert said, "I was surprised. When I researched the material, I found a great black stone that could be volcanic rock. My hypothesis is that this object, this structure, was formed during the Ice Age many thousands of years ago." End quote. But despite his analysis, Bruchert said it was possible that the samples they collected may be covering up something beneath the surface, something artificial, and the Ocean X team believed this is the case. They wanted to go back down and capture definitive proof. Though acquiring the funding would prove difficult. And Bruchert's assessment did not necessarily help with publicity, as news outlets that originally claimed the find was an extraterrestrial craft picked up on the fact that their collected samples were simply granite. Headlines began to appear, which quickly shifted the narrative and labeled the anomaly debunked. The frustrated Lindbergh and Asberg, who still to this day have not been able to finance another trip down to determine whether it's definitely natural or artificial. How many feet down is it? That was that city we just read about that was 2,000 feet down. Only 300 feet below the surface, off the coast of Sweden. A World War II remnant of the Schmatzis. Less than 5% of the planet's oceans and seas have been explored. Though the Baltic is almost entirely landlocked, it is a massive body of water located in what was a hotly contested area during the Second World War. At that time, the Baltic Sea created a natural boundary between the Allied Soviet Union, neutral Scandinavia, and the powers of the Axis. Needless to say, it was an epicenter of naval activity, primarily in the battle to control the Baltic states of Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. In the struggle for control over this key real estate, countless mines were planted, and naval warfare waged to protect key shipping routes, especially for the Germans, who relied on a supply of iron ore imported from Sweden. During this time, it is believed that the Germans constructed underwater structures to scramble communication signals and possibly disrupt enemy mines. Could this explain why the Ocean X team's electrical equipment failed within 200 meters of the anomaly? The Germans also allegedly ran a clandestine program, which attempted to create flying saucers, leading some to posit the possibility that this was a crash site of one of the elusive schmatzy Foo Fighters. These potential explanations are more practical than an extraterrestrial spacecraft, though they're just as intriguing. Maybe not just as intriguing. Maybe less intriguing. But according to... excuse me. But according to Russian publication Pravda, the Baltic has had UFO sightings in the past. And you know you can trust Pravda. Notably during an instance in 2008, in which a silver disc was witnessed hovering around the Russian province of Kaliningrad. There are a dearth of reports to corroborate this claim. What? There are no reports to corroborate this claim? Only Pravda? Lindbergh and Asberg have not posted any updates to the Ocean X page in a few years. However, a YouTube video from 11 years ago appears to show another trek down into the anomaly in a submarine rover. Unfortunately, the video doesn't provide much in the way of answers or even anything visually distinctive, as there's a lot of sand and dust kicked up, which obfuscates the view. However, there is a momentary glimpse of one of the anomaly's walls, showing a rock face that appears too smooth and well-shaped to be a natural feature. In subsequent reports, there have been claims that rock sample tests turned up limonite and geothite, metals one geologist claims could not be found occurring naturally in an underwater rock formation at the bottom of the Baltic. Let's check out some art. You're at CNET.com. There's an article entitled, "These Terrifying Squids Will Freak You Out. Pictures," written by Leslie Gorenstein. Actually, Leslie Gorenstein. Do you think the squids are just a bunch of adorable big-eyed sea creatures waiting to be your next plate of fried calamari? Guess again. The Freaky World of Squids. Sure, the tiny ones are delicious, but there are other ones, bigger ones, with very creepy facts attached to them. There's a reason why stories of squids have haunted sailors' dreams for generations. Vampire squids such as this one, photographed at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, are cephalopods that technically fall somewhere between octopi and squids, but belong to their own class, Vampiromorphida. They don't feed on blood, but they do have a vaguely disturbing habit of turning themselves inside out if they are threatened. Vampiromorphida. If it's really stressed out, the vampire squid will fire a sticky blob of glowing mucus at an enemy for up to 10 minutes. As a predator, the Humboldt squid can grab prey with a speed that observers have likened to lasers. They've also attacked cameras and lights, and even the diving masks of humans trying to observe them. Colossal squids, such as this one found in the Antarctic, also have wicked-looking suckers, along with arm hooks, set in a double row in the middle of each arm. Three words: Japanese flying squid. Yes, there are squids that can fly. And not just for a few feet at a time either. Think 30 meters at a time, using membranes similar to that of a flying squirrel. A very tentacled, very muscular, very wet flying squirrel. This specimen was photographed flying about 100 nautical miles north of a remote group of volcanic islands in the South Atlantic Ocean. So this is the one in flight, huh? Wow. Almost human. The eyes of the squid have evolved in pretty much the same way that human eyes have. The eyes of larger squids can be the size of dinner plates. These eyes came from a giant Humboldt squid caught in the Sea of Cortez. Here's another view of the same squid eye, in case you need a closer view. This looks microscopic. This cute little Hawaiian bobtail squid can light up, but only because of a colony of parasites living inside it. The parasite, a bacteria called Vibrio fischeri, is fed a sugary solution by the squid. In turn, the light-up parasite acts almost like a camouflage, hiding a backlit squid from predators when viewed from below. Giant baby squids. Let's ease you into giant squids by first showing you what they look like when they're young and relatively cute. These young giant squids, about 6 inches long, were caught in the waters near the Japanese city of Hamada in 2013. You're looking at 2 of the first 3 baby giant squid ever caught. So only 3 have been caught, and 2 of them were caught at that time. Either they have one really long arm, or that's an umbilical cord for both of them. Interesting. Giant squids have very big children. To put things into perspective, the 3 baby squids, including the one shown here, this is the famous number 3. No, it's not umbilical cord. They have 2 of them. Maybe they're antennae. Are about the same size, as non-giant adult squids. Giant squids live in a sea so deep, it's not even clear what else is down there. What we do know is this: they can grow up to 40 feet. The only predators big enough to eat the adults are sperm whales or pilot whales. Not even a deep-sea shark is brave enough to take on a full-grown giant squid. Let's check out some art. Here's an interesting story at interestingengineering.com, written by Christopher McFadden. Entitled Whirlpools 101, How They Form, Are They Dangerous, and How to Survive One. And the author begins. Wait, I have a special note, or do I? Yes, I do. Begin at number 1, it says. There we go. The Saltstraumen Maelstrom. They misspelled Maelstrom. Norway is a very impressive one. A small strait known as Saltstraumen can be found 20 miles southeast of Bodo, Norway, not far from the Arctic Circle. It has one of the world's strongest tidal currents. And when the current is strongest, whirlpools of up to 33 feet in diameter and 60 feet in depth can develop. The Makstraumen is another powerful maelstrom that can be found in Norway. Look at it, here's on this old map. Isn't that something? Or the Moskenstraumen system of whirlpools can be found near the Lofoten Islands off Norway's coast, with flow currents reaching up to 20 miles per hour, or 32 kilometers per hour. It is claimed as the second strongest whirlpool on the entire planet. According to legend, this is the whirlpool that is marked as Horrenda Charybdis on Olaus Magnus's map. It also features in Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and is mentioned by Captain Ahab in Herman Melville's Moby Dick. The Makstraumen comprises strong semi-daily tides, an oddly shaped seabed, and a shallow ridge between the Muskensia and the Faroe Islands that makes tides stronger and swirl around. The Makstraumen is a group of currents and cross-currents, and is described by Edgar Allan Poe, Jules Verne, and Lu as a huge circular vortex that goes all the way to the ocean floor. In his short story, A Descent into the Maelstrom, published in 1841, Edgar Allan Poe used the term maelstrom for the first time in English. In this tale about the Lofoten Maelstrom, two fishermen are sucked into the maelstrom while one escapes. Scotland has its own famous whirlpool, too. This we saw on the video, I believe. I don't remember. The Gulf of Corryvreckan is a narrow strait between the islands of Jura and Scarba, and Argyll and Bute, along Scotland's northern coast. A place of outstanding natural beauty. It is also home to the world's third largest whirlpool. Yeah, that was a previous reading, I believe. The whirlpool is affected by a large rock pinnacle or wall under the sea, which rises to around 95 feet below the surface. Water is forced upward when it hits the rock, causing huge swirling waves. The waters of Corryvreckan can be driven up to waves of more than 30 feet in height by flood tides and input from Firth of Lorne to the west. The noise of the accompanying maelstrom, which reaches speeds of 11 miles per hour, can be heard more than 10 miles away. A mannequin, outfitted with a depth gauge and a high-visibility vest, was once thrown into the Corryvreckan. It was nicknamed the Hag by a documentary crew of independent Scottish filmmakers. A depth gauge value of 860 feet indicated that the mannequin was destroyed and spewed up deep downstream. It also showed signs of being dragged along the bottom for a considerable distance. Between Deer Island, New Brunswick, Canada, and Moose Island, Eastport, Maine, USA, you can find Old Sow Whirlpool. When the vortex is at its ferocious peak, it emits a screeching scream and can reach speeds up to 17 miles an hour, earning its name. Piglets are the names for tiny whirlpools that surround this old sow. The Naruto whirlpools, which can attain speeds of 16 miles per hour, are found close to Awaji Island in Japan. On Canada's Sunshine Coast, Skookumchuck Narrows is a tidal rapid with a current may reach speeds of over 19 miles an hour and create whirlpools. Are whirlpools dangerous, and can you escape them? Contrary to popular belief, and as often portrayed in fiction, like in the whirlpool battle in Pirates of the Caribbean, whirlpools are not as destructive as they are depicted. However, they can pose a potential threat to people and small vessels. That being said, most individuals who go near a whirlpool won't be caught up in a vortex, but many others, like kayakers, will find it helpful to know how to survive one. Ken Whiting, a world champion kayaker, advises that when entering the water, you should wear safety equipment, such as a life vest and a helmet. These can shield you from the battering currents with which whirlpools are surrounded. It is best to stay out of the area entirely if you spot any whirlpool warning signs. If you find yourself in a whirlpool, avoid moving in the same direction as the water. Genius. And try to stay away from the center. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Try to keep the boat or kayak from filling with water. Bail. You may also find that according to sources like the Smithsonian Magazine, the whirlpool has the potential to toss you back out. That also being said, it has been shown that short-lived whirlpools brought on by significant major engineering catastrophes, like the Lake Punure accident, are capable of engulfing even medium-sized vessels, like barges and tugboats. During this event, a Texaco-hired oil rig was carrying out exploratory drilling in the lake in 1980, above the long-running salt mine owned by the Diamond Crystal Salt Company. The drilling had accidentally penetrated a main shaft of the mine. Lake water rushed into the mine, resulting in a deep hole forming in the lake, and the conversion of the shallow lake's fresh water to salt water. However, the ensuing maelstrom destroyed or swept away the evidence that may have been utilized to pinpoint the precise cause. What is known is that the rig's 14-inch drill bit had been stuck for 2.5 hours when the draining was first noticed. After that, the lake began to leak into the hole, enlarging it as the rushing water swept earth and salt into the mine, filling the massive caverns left by the removal of salt way back in 1919. 50 miners raced to escape the rising waters, using mine carts and a very slow elevator to exit the mine 8 people at a time. But they all survived. Up top, the oil workers saw their 150-foot derrick sucked into the lake, a lake with an average depth of 3 feet. The lake water then began to circle around its new drain, turning the lake into a giant whirlpool of mud, trees, and barges. A tugboat, a dock, another drilling platform, 11 supply barges, numerous trees, a parking lot, and around 65 acres of nearby Jefferson Island were all swallowed up by the resulting sinkhole. This event created the largest waterfall in Louisiana ever, albeit momentarily, by the Delcombre Canal's normally outflowing backward flow. The amount of water drained into the caverns was so great that it caused the Delcombre Canal's normal flow of salt water from the Gulf of Mexico into the now dry lake bed to be reversed. So it's saltier in the lake now than in the Gulf. As the lake was refilled with saline water from the Delcombre Canal and Vermilion Bay, this overflow produced for a few days the largest waterfall ever in the state of Louisiana, over 150 feet tall. Water entering the mine cavern displaces air, which eventually erupts from the mine shafts as 400-foot geysers. Despite the fact that no human lives were lost, the demise of 3 dogs were reported. The drilling companies eventually agreed to pay $45 million to the mine owners and other flooded local businesses. It was ultimately discovered that the Texaco platform had been drilling in the wrong place due to a mapping mistake. How do you escape from a whirlpool? Avoid being sucked into a whirlpool in the first place is the best way to survive. Thank you. Pull your kayak over to the side and walk downstream to check for any standing whirlpools. If a whirlpool forms suddenly in front of you in the water, make powerful strokes to go to the side of the whirlpool that is moving downstream. Use your momentum and extra paddle strokes and the force of the downstream flow to escape the side of the whirlpool. The easiest to avoid are standing ones, but they can also be the most difficult to exit. The Old Sow, located in Canada, the largest standing whirlpool in the Western Hemisphere, has been responsible for a long list of fatalities. Let's check out some art. Here at Gizmodo.com is a story by Alistair Wilkins entitled Meet the Bloop, the mysterious sound from the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. And Mr. Wilkins begins. In the summer of 1997, the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration picked up a sound from deep beneath the Pacific. The sound seemed to come from an animal far larger than any we've ever seen. This was the bloop. The bloop is one of about a half dozen unexplained sounds that their acoustic monitoring project has picked up in its more than 20 years of listening to noises of the Pacific. While some of the sounds seem to have relatively obvious explanations, a few are really baffling, and they represent one of scientists' great unanswered mysteries. Let's now take a closer listen to the bloop and 5 other strange underwater sounds. How are we going to listen to it? They have audio files. Oh, yeah, they do. Cool. Why does it go continue reading? I hope we can continue reading. Thank you. Back in the Cold War, the U.S. Navy set up a series of massive arrays of microphones throughout the world's oceans. These, surprisingly enough, were meant as a way to listen in on Soviet submarines. And they took advantage of a phenomenon known as the deep sound channel, an ocean layer where the speed of sound becomes virtually nothing, and low-frequency sound waves that enter the channel can become trapped, bouncing around in the layer for thousands of miles. This phenomenon allowed the arrays of the Sound Surveillance System, or SOSUS, to be able to detect even relatively weak sounds from hundreds of miles away. With the end of the Cold War in 1990, the array's original 30-year mission came to an end and was replaced with a new civilian function of just generally monitoring the sounds of the ocean. For the last 20 years, the NOAA and its Equatorial Pacific Ocean Autonomous Hydrophone Array have been doing just that. For the most part, it's not hard to identify the sounds that are emitted. Whales are a frequent source of low-frequency noise, as is volcanic activity and the movement of icebergs, plus all the human-made devices still at work under the sea. These all have their own distinctive sound print, so there's rarely any question of where a sound came from. But every so often, the Acoustic Monitoring Project picks up a sound that defies explanation. Here are the 6 sounds that the NOAA officially considers unexplained. All of these have been sped up between 16 and 20 times their real speed, so that we actually hear them. Okay, sound number 1. The most famous of sounds is this one, known as the bloop. There's a real obvious bloop in the beginning of that one. Let's hear that one more time. It was recorded in 1997, originating from a point about 1,500 miles west of the southern coast of Chile. It was powerful enough to be picked up on sensors located 3,000 miles away, making it one of the most powerful noises ever recorded underwater. The sound lasted for just over a minute, that sound being speeded up, and has not been detected since. It should be pointed out, now that the NOAA has checked with the Navy and other groups to rule out a human-made source in this and the rest of these cases. We'll come back to other possible explanations for the bloop in a little bit. Maybe. But first, let's examine the other sounds. This is Upsweep, which was first recorded in 1991. Unlike most of the other sounds on this list, it can still be heard. While the noise is strongest in the spring and fall, it appears to be getting generally weaker over time. My guess, generally weaker over time, probably has something to do with the melting polar caps, melting icebergs. It's located somewhere deep in the South Pacific near Antarctica, located about 2,500 miles due west of the very southern tip of South America. It was initially thought that this sound might be created by fin whales. But 5 years later, researchers Émile Ocal and Jacques Talendier argued that there wasn't enough variation in the tone for it to be biological. Whales would not be able to communicate much if they only used these same tones over and over. They argue this is some unusual acoustic phenomenon linked to volcanic activity in the region, perhaps the result of seawater and volcanic gas interacting and creating a resonance pattern. Sure enough, a French vessel found volcanic seamounts in the region, which makes this the most likely explanation. I stick by my guns. I think it's melting ice caps. Let's move on to Slow Down, which was first recorded in 1997. Like Upsweep, the sound can still be heard several times each year. Slow down on your way to hell. Next up is Train, so named because it recalls the sound of a distant train. This one was also recorded in 1997, although we don't know exactly where the sound came from. Does not look like a repeating sound, but it doesn't say. Sounds like a train whistle. We know very, very little about Julia, which was recorded 2 years later in 1999. The sound lasted all of 15 seconds, and in that time was picked up by every sensor on the Equatorial Pacific Ocean Autonomous Hydrophone Array. It's near Peru. We have no idea what caused it. Talk about a monster of the deep. Finally, we have Whistle, which was recorded 2 years earlier in 1997. This one was only picked up by a single hydrophone near Costa Rica. There are no explanations for this sound. Sounds like a windy desert plain. Here at AmericanOceans.org is an uncredited story entitled Sea Monsters. And the author begins. Yellow Roseford, Texas says, "This is hysterical." I know. 70% of the world's surface is covered by water. And throughout history, humans have been preoccupied with wondering what lies below the storm-tossed seas. These adventures have come with horror stories of sea monsters. But are these creatures real or mythical? The creatures are typically large and threatening, and each society that came in contact with seas or oceans has some kind of sea monster in its history. Another inspiration for sea monsters is unexplainable ship damage. Remains of shipwrecks from hurricanes and other sea storms were inexplicable to humans. So there's a possibility that the creatures were developed to explain the distortion of ships. Stories about these monsters were frequently inspired by encounters with whales, enormous squid, seals, and optical illusions like inanimate floating objects. The proportions of these animals were often exaggerated, since there is no reference point for size in the open sea. Nevertheless, it's intriguing to note that these mythical sea creatures exist in many civilizations and have similar names and origins. The Kraken. The legendary Kraken is an iconic sea monster, believed to be a menace to sailors on the coasts of Norway and Greenland. The name of this monster derives from Norwegian, which means unhealthy or twisted beast. It could be the colossal sea monster. It could be the most colossal sea monster ever envisioned. According to some accounts, it was more than 2.5 kilometers in circumference, and it had arms the size of ship masts. It was thought that this mythical sea monster spewed a substance of its last meal into the sea when it needed to feed. The chum would then attract a shoal of fish into the area to dine on the bait. Once enough fish had accumulated, the Kraken would reach up and swallow all the fish before submerging back into deep waters to sleep and digest. The hypothesis behind the existence of the Kraken myth is based on the sighting of a giant squid. This suggestion comes from the anatomy of the giant squid and its similar hunting methods. The mythical Kraken has been featured in various top-rated movies, TV shows, and films. Cetus. Greek mythology is rich in gods and monsters, so it is not surprising there are some notable Greek mythical sea monsters. Cetus is a common name for sea creatures in Greek mythology, making the word vague, but contextually. Takahama Olsen 2, thank you for the super chat. Much appreciated, TO2. Thank you so much, dear. But contextually, Cetus is the Greek version of the mythical Kraken. The Greeks often pictured Cetus as a hybrid beast. It had 4 feet. 4 feet. Not 4 feet, but feet in the front. It had 4 feet, enormous jaws, and a scaly body like a giant sea snake, or a sea snake. Cetus ravaged Ethiopia's coast. It says Ethiopia here, huh? Until the frantic leader, King Cepheus, sought advice from an oracle. This sea monster was Poseidon's flunky, sent to eat Andromeda in retaliation for her mother's bragging that Andromeda is the most beautiful of all the sea creatures. Perseus came to the rescue of Andromeda at the last minute by holding up Medusa's head, which turned Cetus into stone. The Cetus was put among the stars to symbolize Perseus's valor and warn the Greek people against anger or envy. I'm not too much into mythology. Leviathan. Leviathan is depicted as a sea reptile, a terrifying sea monster boasting a Hebrew origin, which was featured in the Old Testament of the Bible, which makes it the oldest sea monster ever mentioned. This sea reptile is a massive primordial sea serpent with multiple heads. In the biblical context, God slays the monster and provides its remains as food to the Hebrews in the wilderness. I don't remember that part. Slays Leviathan, really? I remember manna. I have such a terrible memory. However, the Leviathan has been interpreted in divergent ways by various societies and religions. As Judaism progressed, the Leviathan evolved from a spooky sea serpent to a sea dragon, which resonates better with people today. Modern Christianity portrays the Leviathan as a hungry monster with an insatiable appetite for God's creatures. He's not a God's creature. Let's check out some art.
Today, we are studying the habits of the dreaded Godthåb shark. Observe the Godthåb shark in his natural habitat. This is a fine specimen. He surfs the interwebs with ease. He is a mighty hunter, as deadly as he is beautiful. What is this? He is on the prowl. He is on the hunt. It is the time of feeding. He senses a weakness. But he is mistaken. He remembers the kitchen. There is often food. He uses all his stealth and cunning. But the chef will have none of it. He flees. Next, he approaches a group of females. But he spots their prey, a developer, rocking out to his punk rock music. The Godthåb shark has found an easy target. He moves in stealth like the dark of the sea. The developer will never see it coming. Getting into position, he strikes. The vicissitudes of nature. The developer should have watched more Shark Week to avoid becoming shark food.